Let's get started here. Maximizing mission capability with Tableau. What are we doing to help our Navy pilots and Marine Corps pilots provide products and services? What products and services are we providing to help them achieve their goals, achieve their missions? How are we doing this? So my name is Matt Flaherty. I work for the NAVAIR Digital Group. We are a group within NAVAIR that is responsible for trying to bring the workforce into the digital age, digitize things, bring digital environments, right, that these guys can utilize to do their jobs. We're trying to get rid of paper processes. We don't want hand signatures anymore, right? We want the tools that we are using to become the work, essentially. So I got a couple of my teammates here, so I'm going to shout out to Amanda and Joseph and these guys. These guys were key instruments to helping do what you're going to see up here today. So here's what we're going to cover. I think got a brief introduction from me, but it helps to put some context between what we're doing, what the business of NAVAIR is. Our tool, the AMS tool suite, which is what we are responsible for, that's the tool that we developed to help enable the business pieces of it. So what kind of data are we capturing in terms of contract awards, finances, so on and so forth. And then what did we actually do with Tableau? Why did we choose Tableau? What was the whole purpose of involving Tableau with the things that we created, this product that we created? So after that, I'm going to go ahead and show you guys what we actually did. I'll give you a brief demo. Hopefully that goes okay, because I know demos are kind of tough when you're sitting up here. So we'll show you guys what the actual product was, and then talk about what the effects were. After we released this, we got such a great response from our POs, our programs, that there was a demand for us to provide more products to these guys. So talk about that, and then where are we going to go from here in terms of organizing a self-service environment, self-service portals, and getting the community, the Tableau community, rallied together. So for those that don't know, are there any DoD folks in here? So a lot of people should be familiar with some of the concepts I'm going to talk about here. We're an acquisition command. We're responsible for bringing products and services to the naval aviation enterprise. So making sure that we're providing, again, our Navy pilots, our Marine pilots, the capabilities that they need to achieve their mission effectively, efficiently, and so that they can return home safely. I mean, that's what it boils down to for us. So you can see here we got if you're familiar with the PEO construct, NAVAIR has 4 PEOs, 5 if you count JSF, and I think there's somewhere between 35 to 40 programs that are aligned to these different PEOs. So we're full lifecycle management. If it is involved with aviation, if you're a Navy pilot and you're flying it, you're using it for testing, NAVAIR's probably been involved, right? So everything from the development of the requirements, the maturity of those products, the sustainment, the operations, we are involved with those things. So NAVAIR itself divides itself. In order to do this business, we have to divide ourselves into a few different business units, right? So NAVAIR has some NOC agencies and our fleet readiness centers. The NOCs are usually involved with the research, the development, the engineering pieces, the maturity of the products, and the readiness centers are all about sustaining those products and making sure that they're operational, making sure that like the planes are available to our pilots to use, because that is one of the big things that is concerning to some of the aviation enterprise. So how do we play a part in that? Well, we develop a product called AMS. It's the Acquisition Management System. And really, there's a lot of tools out there. We're focused on planning, right? Planning of getting a procurement to awarding a contract. And also the planning of how we're going to spend dollars, how we're going to spend money. So everybody's familiar with a spend plan? No, so it's how I'm going to obligate money throughout a specific period or when I'm going to obligate dollars. And then everybody here familiar with procurements and the whole process of doing the checks, the tech evals, the negotiations, the releasing the RFPs, all those things. So our tools are responsible for managing the planning of getting a contract to award and the planning of the money. The important thing here to mention is with all these different kind of business units, you usually focus on contracts, you focus on the finance pieces, and then you focus on the post-award. That's our Seadrill product. I'm not going to talk about Seadrill as much. I'm going to focus on CSPT, which is the Common Spend Plan portion, and then PMT, which is the procurement management portion. But in these different business pillars, they're intertwined, but the groups typically don't talk to each other. So the good thing about AMS is we've kind of integrated these tools together so that we make sure that our finance folks, our contracts folks are in sync with the true story that's going on. And what I mean is, usually in a spend plan, when the dollars get obligated, that's equivalent to a contract award. So if our contracts folks are pushing the schedule to the right, our finance folks need to know that so they can update their spend plans. And that's what we do in these tools, fully integrated and keeping everything in sync so we're all telling the same story, reading from the same book. We get about 9,000 users. I think we get anywhere between a couple hundred to a couple thousand hits a day, depending. I'm sure a couple thousand hits is when the end of the fiscal year is coming up and everybody's like, oh, we need to get money on contract. So that's basically what we do. Again, PMT, procurement management tool. So we're talking about planning out a procurement until contract award. And there's a lot of focus on cycle times, if you guys are familiar, reducing the amount of time it takes to get things awarded. That's a big problem because when contracts aren't awarded, there are impacts to the fleet, there are impacts to the pilots, right? There's severe impacts to these guys. So really we need to make sure that we're taking care of the business side of the house, right? Because these guys can't fly if certain contracts are not awarded. So PMT, CSPT, again, the spend plan tool, how I'm obligating my dollars, how I'm tracking to benchmarks for OSD, FMB, for those of you guys that are familiar with that, and making sure that the money is getting obligated so in the end we're not cutting checks back to Treasury and really doing a good job of spending that money that we said we were going to spend. All right, so before Tableau in AMS, we did have some pretty good reports, but they were Excel-based. Our team is pretty good with pivot tables. We're pretty good with pivot charts. We're utilizing some of the more advanced techniques within Excel, but we did have some problems with it. So imagine going into the tool, generating a report, and it's a static file at that point. So you got all your users going in there, generating these files. They might have a review coming up. Well, there's problems with that, right? You got multiple versions laying around. Now people are making corrections. Another problem, people are making corrections directly to those reports before they move it up the chain. And there's a lot of churn going on there, right? The story is changing, right? Two problems with that. We want the story to be very consistent. Right? We don't want people going in and making themselves look good. There's no problem with the reds and the yellows. It's not a report card against anybody. It's really how can we help, right? Okay, I see you're struggling here. How can we help? So if we have users that are going in and actually changing the reports to reflect something that's not necessarily the true case, there's an issue there. And not only that, but doing those things outside of the system doesn't help the system, doesn't help the data fidelity, right? The data that's being captured in there. It really doesn't do any good. So, and we'd see that a lot. You know, people would tailor the story. I'll say, I'll get to this later. I'll go into PMT. I'll update the schedule later. I'll go into CSPT. I'll update my spend plan. And then they wouldn't do it. And then what happens? Next review comes around, and you have the same problem. So the other thing we were having trouble with was that the higher up you went when you're running these reports, you're getting more and more of a portfolio, right? And that's really taxing on the back end. It's really taxing on the database. So we wanted to make sure that the performance of our systems wasn't being impacted by the generation of these Excel spreadsheets. And in some cases there were, and then we would have to respond to that and figure out clever ways to get around that. So that was kind of, so this next slide here, you can see. So this is kind of the story, right? You go into the tool, you run a report. Joe hands it to Sally. Sally hands it to Amanda. Oh, this doesn't look right, guys. Let's go ahead and correct this, and before we move it up the chain. And then in the end, you get this nice, pretty picture that is really not as reflective of reality as it should be. Even though the reports are great, you know, the ability to go in and change that there is just not something we wanted. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to leverage some of these more advanced visualization tools and actually bring the reporting into the tool. So the users are going in and actually visualizing things from one area, one specific place. We're all reading from the same book, and the data is being updated for the users. They're not having to go in and generate these things when they need to. So that's what we wanted to do, and we want to leverage tools like Tableau or some of these other vendors that are out there in order to do this. And the other thing we had to be really cognizant of was permissions. Our tools are permission-based. So if I go into PMT or CSPT, I'm going to see what I have access to. Well, we needed to make sure that the reporting that we put into these tools followed that permissions model. So even though we might be leveraging one report for the whole command, if I go in and I look at this, I only see the things that I have access to. So those are some of the challenges, and really these were the original requirements that we were operating off of when we began this project. So AMS plus Tableau. I'm going to pause right here. So this slide really could be anything. It could be AMS plus vendor. At one point it was. So we didn't start with Tableau. There was another product out there that was available to us that it was all over the command's tongue. This is the product they were going to use. I'm not going to say what it was, but there was a different product in this equation here when we first started this. And we found that during the time that we started to try to work out an implementation plan with this, we were running into a lot of roadblocks. The capabilities that we wanted weren't necessarily there, or we had to be flexible. We had to tailor our vision in order to let the tool accommodate it. So we tried, we focused on that tool and we went down this path. But at some point, we came to the realization that we're going to have to make a decision whether or not we want to continue or we want to pivot and use another tool. And I met with my boss, and we just didn't feel comfortable. So what did we do? We turned inward to the command, and we tried to find what other tools were out there available, right? Go down the dark alleys and say, well, what are you guys using, right? And Tableau kept coming up. So we engaged with the sales team, pre-sales, and we talked to them about, hey, here's the things we want to accomplish. This is what we're trying to do. Can you guys do this? Can you guys help us and provide us support? I said, sure enough, yep, we can help you. And we went ahead and gave them a few little tests, right? So there was a report that we think is very valuable that was available via Excel that we really wanted to recreate. And when we tried this with the other vendor, they said, no, we can't do this, but we'll give you something very similar. Well, truth be told, it wasn't very similar. It was very confusing, and in the end, it just didn't work. We asked Tableau the same thing. These guys sat down, and I'm telling you, within minutes, they just recreated the whole thing straight from this data set that we gave them, and it was amazing. Things as simple as changing the month of the FY was more complex in the other tool than in Tableau, and they're just going and clicking. So at that point, we knew, all right, this is the right product, but we need to make sure that we've got some supporting architecture here, because we're not changing our deployment date. We're moving forward with this, so we need to make sure that we're utilizing everything we have available internally. And we turned to some of our other programs. PMA 261 was extremely helpful. They had a server already that we could leverage, so we said, yes, get us in there. Let's start seeing how we can embed this within our tool. And that's kind of the beginning of the story with Tableau, and that's where we went. We knew we had the supporting architecture to do it. We knew that we had the capabilities within the desktop version itself to build out these reports. So we're 100% on board at that point. So I'm going to kind of talk about a few focus areas of the project. So one of the things that I mentioned was we had to make sure that permissions were the same when I was looking at this visualization embedded within the tool. So it was a huge focus area for us. But when we were working with the other vendor, this is one of the things that kind of got pushed to the side. It was, this is easy, we'll take care of this later. Well, when we engaged with Tableau support and they sent one of their folks down to help us implement this project, he said the first thing you guys got to do is you got to figure out this permissions model. I said, well, yeah, isn't that the easy part? And he said, it doesn't matter. You don't have a true way of telling whether or not this is going to work. So we're going to tackle this first. And it's as simple as we just need to make sure that the records are coming back based on you as a user. So it was just one of those aha moments where he's right. If we don't fix this up front, then we'll have nothing, right? And we're back to square one again, and then all this time is just wasted because we can have the best dashboards ever, but we're not going to be able to embed it in the tool. That's our end goal, embed this stuff within the tool. So we went in, and really it was as simple as, hey, we've got records, we've got users, we're going to join it against the actual records on another table. It doesn't matter what the metadata is. We just need to make sure that me as a user has access to these 3 items, I see 3 items. And we tackled that within a day with the Tableau support. So once we knew that, huge weight off of our shoulder, we knew that was going to work, a huge weight off of our shoulders, right? And we knew we could move forward from there. So permissions, huge important thing, especially, and the reason why I mentioned this is because if you guys are looking to do something similar within any tools that you might be working on, this is something that you're going to want to consider. Make sure you get the permissions taken care of up front. So the next thing that we started to look at were creating dashboards. So this is probably the easiest part, in all honesty. We're fortunate enough to have a lot of good reports out there, like I said, in Excel format, Excel pivot formats that we could leverage, right? It's all about, hey, let's not recreate the work if we don't have to. Let's leverage these existing things that we have. So that's exactly what we did. We took some of our, what we consider the more important dashboards, and we started to recreate those things, but then we started to improve upon them, right? So dashboarding is all about multiple angles, ways of looking at things, but in the end, you might still get down, when you get down to the most granular, you might be looking at a single record. And what I mean by that is, take for example, if I'm mapping out a plan to award a procurement, I'm going to have a baseline, I'm going to snap the chalk line, and then I'm going to have revisions throughout that. I'm going to have what my current plan is, and then I'm going to have what I'm actually executing. That's about as basic as you can get. So it's important that any layering, any drilling down is going to take you down to that level. So that's what I'm saying in more words or less, is that taking care of the granular and understanding how you're going to layer it up to a certain aggregate was one of the things that we did to kind of improve upon the things that we already had. So creating the dashboards piece was probably the easier part. The skills from Excel translated really well, but we did get some help there, and then we've got some great Tableau developers on our team that really got us moving forward on there. And I'm going to show you guys a couple of these later with some tailored data sets to show you what I'm talking about. Now, connecting to data sources, this is a good one. It's not only connecting to the data sources, but it's also connecting to the models that are involved with that. And that is where most of the work really resides, is how do we model the data, where do we put it, How do we connect to it? We had to ask ourselves whether or not we wanted to leverage warehousing technologies. Did we want to connect direct to our SQL database? Those are the types of things that we were kind of going through. In the end, we didn't leverage any warehousing. We decided we wanted to do direct connections to our SQL database, but we also knew that we needed some sort of intermediary layer that would take care of the transformation of the data for us, and we would tap directly into that. And the reason for that is because performance against the actual PMT AMS product. We didn't want anything affecting the user experience within those tools, right? So we wanted to be very careful with that, minimal impacts against the tool itself. So what we did was we basically have scripts that run against the database to transform the data in the ways that we need it. And at the time, we were operating off of, I think it was 10.5, maybe 10.0. So we didn't have the ability to do multi-source extracts. So we were doing live direct connections at that time, but we've since then, we have actually moved to extracts just to optimize the workbooks themselves so that we're actually connected to an extract rather than direct to the database. And then the last focus area we had was actually embedding the application within our tool. So two things here. This isn't really my area of expertise, but talking with developers, two options were we can utilize APIs, we can utilize iframes. And at the time, iframes was the easier option. Sometimes it's a matter of, hey, this is easier to do. This is what we're going to go ahead with. And in that time, we can go ahead and look into how we can implement the API calls in the future. And that's actually what we're looking into now. We're going to move off of iframes. I think we're going to utilize APIs a little bit more. But you'll see, it got us the product that we needed embedded within the tool. And the other question is, why are we embedding in the first place? Well, again, we wanted to bring the user experience to the tool itself. We wanted to bring all of the users into the tool. This is a single source of truth for us. This is, we're not, going outside and doing any manipulations outside of that tool. And in the end, this was kind of the dream state that we got to, and we did get there, where users are going in at all levels of leadership, visualizing from the tools themselves. We're all on the same page, we're all in the same story, reading from the same book, and everything is wonderful, right? So, all right, so I'm going to actually show you guys, there's two things I'm going to show you. One is the actual embedded functionality within the tool, and then I'll take you guys through a couple workbooks, depending on time here, and show you how we're actually kind of aligning the data to some of the more strategic level initiatives that we have going on. So bear with me here. Yeah, Tableau conference. So what I'm going into here is the PMT application. If anybody is familiar with NMCI, I'm going to have to go through like 8 hops before I actually get there. So you're going to see me, it's all IA stuff. You can't get around it, but ensures that our systems are nice and secure. Yeah. Demos are the best. Live demos are the best, right? We operate at high risk when we do these things. So. All right, so this is the AMS application. This is the PMT portion of that. What you see here, here's the initial launch screen. And this is just a default that lists all the PIDs I have access to, or I'm mapped to. But we want to show you how we're actually embedding the Tableau visualizations within our tool. So we have a customized dashboard button here that I'm going to go ahead and click. And I'm going to close this out. Okay. drag. Now we're going to probably change this delivery method. At the time, we had envisioned building the dashboards here, but then we realized we can do all that in Tableau anyways. So that's why you're kind of seeing the click and drag that I'm showing you here. So hopefully the network cooperates with me. But that's essentially what it was on the right-hand screen, and I'll go back. There's a list of reports that are available to our users, and if they want to, they can go in, they can click, they can drag whichever ones they're interested in, and it becomes a part of their landing page here. And we also provide the ability to jump out to Tableau server. They might not necessarily know that, but if they wanted a better view of some of the reports, they can go directly to Tableau server. So that's the embedded piece that you saw. I have site admin access, so I have access to everything. But this is the end product that you see here as far as, hey, embedding within AMS. I'm going to walk you through this report in another view here, but essentially what we're looking at is financial data and procurement data mixed together here. I'll show that to you guys one more time. You guys might be asking, well, that's only one report at a time. Well, we've also created this nifty landing page here. So if you wanted to navigate to multiple reports, you can do that as well. So simple click and drag, and it'll inherit the permissions you have within the tool and present that data to you. Pretty cool, huh? All right. So the next thing I'm going to show you guys, I'll walk you through a few reports that we have, kind of show you how we are aligning the data up to some of the, again, to the more strategic objectives that we've got going on. So since the data is sensitive, I have scrubbed a few data sets to show you guys kind of what the capabilities are of a few of these reports that we have available to us. But again, if you remember earlier, the focus here is finances, how we're obligating our dollars, how we're expending those dollars against the plans that we've put in place, and then how are we executing our procurement plans to get these things to contract awards. So I'm going to take you through the, what we call the fund status first. We actually have one of our PEOs. This is the report that they use for their executive reviews, and I'll talk about that at the end here. But their programs actually go in to these tools and do their reviews direct from here, not from PowerPoint or Excel anymore. Which is a huge win for us. So here we're looking at a few fiscal years of money, and we're looking at reds, yellows, and greens, guys. So how are we operating against benchmarks? So red, if we're below OSD benchmarks, for those of us that are familiar, you have specific targets you need to hit to make sure that the money is getting on contract. So that's what we're trying to evaluate here. So if we're below that target, we're going to come up red. If we are within a certain range here, I've set the variance at 8 here. So if we're within 8% of the target, it's going to be bucketed as yellow or kind of at risk. And then if we're above the target, we're in the green. We're good to go. So this report here, if I just wanted to focus on yellows, it's all interactive. I can select that there. I can see that it's a funding source that I've made up called OM, so I guess you can equate that to maybe operations and maintenance. It's associated with these particular IPTs. And then at the bottom, because our BFMs still like kind of tabular views, which we're trying to walk them away from, we gave them a tabular view, or kind of a cross-tab view at the bottom here, so they can still see, hey, what's going on in a record sort of view. So here's our IPT TOA. here's how much we've obligated against that. That's 5.98%. And here's our benchmark. We are within 8% of that, so it's showing up as green. Now, here's where the power of AMS and us integrating comes into play. So that's a good bit of information. But if I wanted to dig more into that, what is going on with my spend plan here, I can actually click to see more details. Again, guys, this is fake data. So some of these things at PID 75, these things are just random names that I've come up with. So here I'm looking at my spend plan, so FY20 OM, products and efforts, stuff that I made up. But I can see PID data associated with this. So within PMT, you have what's called a PID record. So these are the procurements that are associated with my spend plan. So I can scroll down here and see that I'm planning on obligating dollars throughout these dates here. And then if I wanted to look at a single item, I'll actually generate what we call a Gantt view at the bottom here. Now this data here is CSBT. This data here is PMT. So I can actually see from a contracting perspective whether or not I'm at risk of actually making that award or not. So if I hover over here, if I have something that's due next week and I'm still way in the early phases of this procurement, I know I might be at risk to not obligating that money. So I need to make some adjustments. I need to talk to my contracts people and maybe have them create a plan that's a little bit more realistic or slide the schedule to the right. So here, utilize all this hover over technology. You can see we got all kinds of information here on what the name of the PID is, who the organization is, what the required award date was, estimated value, so on and so forth. We're all familiar with this hover over technology, I hope, within Tableau. But lots of information there that we have if we need to dive into it. Now, one of the other things that we've incorporated in this is the ability to actually drill back to the tool from here to get to this PID. So with that action that you saw me just do, it takes me out of Tableau, and if I need to go make adjustments within the tool, that's all I need to do. I click to edit this PID. Now I'm outside of the report itself, and I'm back in the tool. I can go here and edit my my milestone schedule if I need to get myself back on track. But there's that interaction between the Tableau server environment and the AMS environment itself. So that's our fund status report. That's looking at things from the funding perspective, from the financial perspective, our spend plans, and aligning it to a view that allows us to look at the contracts themselves to see if we're actually going to make these obligation dates or not. So the next one I'm going to show you is called our CSP. It's cost schedule performance report, and this is a PMT-based view. So we're looking at things from the PMT angle here, but we have ties into CSBT with regards to the money. So this is one of our more mature reports. This is actually, I think, the first one that we created. It's gone through multiple iterations. The designer is sitting right here. Her name's Amanda, so if you have any questions, talk to her. But this is one of our more mature ones. There's a lot of good functionality in here. So at the top, what you're looking at here is the number of procurements that we have, award actions. We have 214 in this particular data set. You can see what the estimated dollar value of that is. And you can see which ones are actually awarded and which ones are in progress. Thresholds, is it between this amount and this amount, so on and so forth. But the power here is this is all interactive. I can click on in progress here just to focus on those actions that are still within, are not awarded yet. And then I can start to look at things like, okay, what PIDs do I have that are at risk of expiring funds? So for example, if I click on 2018, I'm looking at all PIDs that have 2018 money associated with it. Well, we all know procurement money expires in 3 years. So this pro here is representing procurement. So I know I've got PIDs out there that are procurement money that are going to expire this year. So I should probably put a little bit of extra attention on those guys to make sure that those contracts are on schedule to award. Otherwise, I might lose that money. So what you're seeing me do here is I'm just tailoring the data down to those things that are interesting to me as I'm going through this, and really bringing my focus area on those things that are important to me at the time that I'm looking at this. So on the bottom here, you'll see a bow wave of when those actions are set to award. And then you'll see the IPTs that those actions are associated with. Now I can flip between this and a Gantt view. And now you get a more granular view of the actions that are reflected here. So there's about 5 PIDs here that I'm looking at. And we also, I know it gets a little cluttered here, but if you wanted to expand this out, here you go. It takes you out to a larger section of the Gantt view. And we provide some navigation back here. And again, I can hover over each and every one of these little triangles here. I'm looking at my original baseline plan. As you can see, this plan probably wasn't the best one. So I'm looking at my original baseline plan here. I'm looking at what my current plans are as I push my schedule to the right. And then here's how I'm actually executing that plan. Now if I navigate back here, it'll take me back to my dashboard. So again, the high to the low, big areas of interest, and how do I get to the granular, more minute details of that via this visualization here. So we can do a little bit more. I can expand this bow wave. Let's say I wanted to see all of the milestones that are associated with this individual PID that's going to award this November. Like again, just this report is probably our most mature. A lot of functionality built in here, a lot of capabilities that I can see. So I can see what my original plans were, how I revised them, and what I'm actually doing. So here we can see that we've got milestone actions against this PID that are yet to be completed. And just like you saw earlier, I can navigate right out of here back into the tool if necessary. So me, as if I was an inputter of this information, I can go in and make adjustments where I needed to. So that is our CSP. I'll show you one more interesting one, because we're going to be short on time here, I think. And I want to be able to answer and field a couple questions for you guys. So this is what we call a commander's intent. A lot of focus on cycle times, reducing cycle times, and how are we tracking to our target cycle times. So this report we actually created for our executive staff that shows, hey, here's where we were historically over the last 5 years. And if you hover over, you can actually see year by year what those were, what's making up those numbers. And then we've got our target here. And then here's how we're actually executing towards that target. Well, this is 149. We are in the clear. We're good to go. But if you actually look at those items that need RFPs, the story is a little bit different here. So if it requires an RFP, right now it's taking about 413 days. So we need to take action against that. We need to figure out what we can do to improve that. If you hover over it, you get a sense of what has been awarded, where we're at with those awards, and then what's still in progress. And currently, if we were to award those things today, that is the cycle time we would be at. So what you're seeing here is it takes all the PIDs that are involved within this data set, and it starts to identify where it's at within the process to tell you whether or not it's meeting its goals in terms of the critical path that we're trying to take to get the single contract award. And what I mean by that is Procurement package development, you see 1 and 4. Well, there is one procurement that's in there that is still tracking to its end date for the procurement, but there are 4 that are already passed that gate. That gate meaning the milestone that's going to take it to the next phase. So we need to put some attention on these items here and figure out what's going on, ask the right questions about how we can help get those items to the next phase. Because really, those are leading indicators for us towards a contract award. We're not necessarily at risk yet, but we need to make sure that we put attention and take action for those particular items so that we can meet the actual contract award dates that are associated with them. And again, I talk about the drill down capabilities that we have for these things, going from the high level down to the more granular. So for this example, I can select all those things which are still in procurement package development. If I don't get too click happy here. And actually drill into the details here. So again, remember what I said about that Gantt view being a really important piece to us. I can go through here, and it presents a list here. I can select each of these PIDs that are associated with that particular data set that I saw, and get a Gantt view of that to see where we're actually at with regards to its plans. So again, a lot of information here. Just a really powerful mechanism to take me from the high level down to the more granular, depending on what level I'm sitting at. And then for all of our navigation, we always provide back buttons that take you back to the original. Guess I got a couple minutes here. And then we got a couple more granular reports. So the ones that you saw are more focused on the contract award. These are focused on the actual milestones that are involved with all the PIDs. So we've provided, one of the things that we were asked for was, hey, let's see all the milestones that are coming due, and let's see it by the people that are responsible for actually executing those milestones or making sure that we're staying on target. So we've got POCs here, the PIDs that they're associated with, and the actual milestones. So we can see that this POC has a few that are late, a few that are coming down the pipeline, and then overall, what is our bow wave of those actions? And then we also have gone as far as to break it out by the individual bow waves for each person. So you guys get the concept. If I was POC 1, Matt Flaherty would be up there, and I would have all this work to do. And then if Kevin Adams was POC 3, he would have no work. So I should probably push some of that work off to him if I was trying to manage this project. And one more that I think is just cool is this calendar dashboard that we built. And really, it's just building out a really granular view of milestone actions that are coming due via calendar look. So I can actually select 20 here, September 20th, and see what actions were due on September 20th and whether or not they were late. So all these, since we're well past September 20th, all these actions are actually late. All right. So those are a few of the reports that we had. I'm going to jump back into this guy now. All right, so with the release of that, right, all this information that we've been collecting over the years in PMT and CSBT, and with the implementation of the embedded solution, what happened, right? What do we see? Well, we actually started to see a large adoption within our programs. They started to become interested. And the other thing we saw was a huge interest from our executive leadership, our senior leaders, in what we were doing. So one of our PEOs, I think I may have mentioned this, but one of our PEOs is actually holding their executive reviews using these dashboards now. The SES that's there said, guys, I don't want PowerPoints. I don't want Excel spreadsheets. I want you guys to brief me with this stuff. And with that, we started getting calls like, oh, hey, what is our SES looking at? Like, you guys got to teach me how to do this. So we got a huge demand from the user community to actually walk them through these things and talk through any of the issues that they felt wasn't being represented well in here. And it became like a collaborative thing. So what you just saw, I mean, those things have evolved over time, right? So engaging with the user community, engaging with our senior executives and our admirals and understanding the things that they want, it's come kind of full circle now. We've always had PMT, but we didn't have the mechanism to really leverage the power of it until we started to do things like this, using Tableau. So we basically just had this huge demand from our end on even explaining these things, and it's been great. Some of our other senior executives that are in charge of these high-level groups within the command are now looking to PMT and AMS to capture the cycle time metrics, because our admiral, as well as I'm sure a lot of others, are interested in cycle time. How do we get things to the fleet faster? Right? We need to make sure that we are not pushing schedules to the right. We're doing things or getting things done when we say we're going to get them done, because there's a domino effect to these things. So we need to make sure that we're on top of it and we're really managing the business well, because at the end of that business is a pilot out there that needs to be safe and needs to get his job done. So it's really important for us to make sure that we can get all the support we need from the people that are inputting to our senior leaders. I will say the senior leadership support really did drive a lot of this, right? What interests my boss is fascinating to me. So we are actually going to a few other PEOs. They're starting to get on board. They're saying, oh, I want to do what PEOCS is doing. So I think we're going to see a lot more adoption across the command for these sorts of reports. So that's kind of where we're at with it now. We went a little backwards, like I said. The senior leaders really like this, but there's still pockets of Tableau communities. You hear a lot about the Tableau community. We just weren't there yet in NAVAIR, I don't think. I didn't even know that we had such a diverse Tableau user base within the command itself. It was kind of amazing. But there's tons of people I've met here that I didn't realize were using. So using Tableau. So what we're doing now is we're working on that piece, right? We're trying to get the user community more involved. Say, hey, Tableau's here. We've got a voice too. Besides the other visualization products that we're always focused on, we've got a huge Tableau community here. So hear us, right? So working on things like the self-service portal where users can come and test out their own skills, have their own sandboxes, and just having a way for us to communicate with each other so that we know we're out there. Anytime we run into problems, we can engage with each other rather than trying to rely on our sales reps or the Tableau customer support. Because there's things that you experience with these tools that I guarantee others have experienced as well. So it's really good to reach out to those communities. And that's the next step for us in terms of building the Tableau community up. The other thing is working on our own dashboards that we're creating for AMS, that particular product, and starting to build in I don't have it on this slide, but build in some more predictive analytics, right? With schedules, you get a sense of what's going on through the actual execution. Well, you can measure that and build a statistical model around that. I should have showed you, we do have a little bit of that in there. But you can tell how at risk something is before you actually get there. So if I've got something that's going to award in January, February, that's all I know about it. But it'd be nice to know if I was at an 80% confidence level, 10% confidence level. So that's the next step for us. We actually have done a little bit of that work with our friends over at Marcor Syscom, and we're kind of piloting that out, but we're going to refine that, use a few more advanced technologies to help make that a little bit more real time, because right now it's static in nature. But want to open up to any questions you guys might have. I'll try to answer as best I can. I've got some folks here that are more on the technical side, so if you want to stick around after, if I can't answer and you want to stick around after and talk to them, they're here as well. So, do we have any questions?